Good afternoon. Good morning.
What?
The fuck you watching? This is the inaugural regular season episode of season 2 of the RosinBaggers podcast.
We're in the same place.
I got
We
both the
are.
boys with me. I got Stove literally to my left.
Yes.
Ty, how you doing, bud?
Dude, drop the mic, boys. Drop the mic on the intro. That's hellaciously amazing work. You guys look like you're in a completely more enjoyable spot than I am in your comfy confines of your outdoor studio.
Probably.
We're talking opening weekend of baseball. Life couldn't be better, boys. And I am all red, white, and blue USA today, baby.
Sir. Yes.
Thank your dad on that one for sure.
Absolutely. Pop's coming through in the clutch with the old birthday gift.
Absolutely. And Ty, happy belated birthday,
Happy
bud.
belated, bud.
Oh, thanks, boys. Thanks.
This one's for you, bud.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers.
Good stuff.
All right, so let's jump into it. We got our first week in the books. Last week, Ty, you said you wanted to take a look at the card series. Talk to us about it.
Yeah. Wow. Jacqueline Hyde, if we're talking about the St. Louis Cardinals. A little bit in the opening series with the Blue Jays. A lot of it when we're talking about the aftermath when we had to turn around and play, whoo boy, the Atlanta Braves. And this just in, that's going to be a fun team for anybody to go up against. St. Louis had their share of struggles, but let's focus and talk about opening day and opening weekend in the 314 in St. Louis, the greatest mecca of all opening day ventures that a baseball fan can go to. They do it right in St. Louis, and they did. The pregame pageantry was emotional. Scott Rowland, the now Hall of Famer, gets to throw out the first pitch. Adam Wainwright gets to sing the national anthem because who knew he could sing? He's also got a talented country vocal pipes. Maybe it wasn't the most star-studded rendition of the anthem I've ever heard, but he did a damn good job, and it was really cool to see Big 5-0 on the microphone honoring America. Then came the game, and it was not a game if you are a fan of great pitching matchups, and we had one, oddly enough, with Alex Manoah going up against the stash man, Miles Michaelis, and we were all comfied in, we strapped in, settled in for what we were expecting to maybe be a 2-1 ball game, and opening day was an offensive onslaught that looked more like a slow-pitch softball game, and runs coming all across the board. In the end, Toronto outlasts St. Louis for a 10-9 opening day victory. Kind of dampers the fun, but it's hard to diminish the fun when it's opening day. Listen, I mean, at the end of the day, all you're hoping for is your team can pick up a W at the end, but certainly memories made and the season getting underway. And then the Cardinals turn it around and have what was a great weekend against the Blue Jays in what, to be honest with you, I had a lot of question marks going into. I said on the podcast last week, St. Louis at this time next week could very well be 0-6. They got the job done. Offensively, absolutely came alive. Not so much Saturday. Saturday grinded out, picked up the 4-1 win, but oh my God, Sunday, there was the signs that this is going to be a very, very tough lineup to crack with St. Louis when their offense is clicking on all cylinders like they were on Sunday afternoon. All told, 4 home runs in the very first inning as Chris Bassett went from hero to zero as soon as he goes from New York to Toronto. And he looked like a completely different pitcher out there. He wasn't locating well at all. His stuff was flat. The Cardinals were crushing him, and it was a great 9-4 victory for St. Louis to pick up the series win against the Blue Jays. Interestingly enough, I thought it was interesting that we're starting opening day with a interleague matchup with the way the schedules are all put together. I mean, traditionally, you're playing a division rival opening day, or at least the NL Central has scheduled as such. Not the case here for the Cardinals with the off-balance schedule. They start off with an interleague matchup and pick up a pretty pivotal 2 games against a Toronto team that, quite frankly, let's face it, by mid-July, by mid-June, when the heat of the summer starts to kick in, they're going to be on all cylinders. And so to be able to pick up a team and get 2 wins against a team like that early, that's going to be huge for St. Louis. There wasn't a lot that shocked me for the Cards coming in. Maybe Miles struggling as much as he did on opening day. I was excited to see the young guy Jordan Walker get the opportunity to get some ABs and pick up his first major league hit. He picked up his first home run today. He appears to be the outfielder for the future. And there's a lot of positive things going on in St. Louis. And obviously you can look at this sweep against the Braves and be like, oh, wow, you pick up a 2 games, a series win against Toronto, and then you come in, you look like it's amateur hour against the Atlanta Braves. And I'm going to say this, and I know we're not focusing on Braves Cardinals specifically, but I know we have a Braves fan that actively listens every single day, and I love that. What I can tell you is the Braves are going to make a lot of teams look like minor league baseball teams out there, and that is just what they do, and they did it this entire series against St. Louis. And so I'm not pressing the panic button yet. Yes, there's been questions about effort in St. Louis, in particular Tyler O'Neill. There was a play last night at the plate. 4-1 ball game, probably could have been 4-2 had he been hustling. Wasn't going 100 miles an hour. There was gas left in the tank, and Ollie calls him out on it. And it's a point of contention, but at the end of the day, he's the captain of his ship, and he knows, not necessarily from the strategy of let's go throw players under the bus, because let's face it, that's not a great strategy. That's been proven time and time again. But he's also a motivator, and he knows that if there's a extra gear or an extra level of competitiveness that T can get to, that he's going to bring it out essentially by calling him out and saying, you're not giving 110%. And when you're on the field, I want to see it. And I'm hoping for the latter and not a big blow up in the outfield here on day 6, but you're prepared to move in whatever direction it flows. But at the end of the day, the biggest question right now is Ollie's got to get all of his 9 that are on the field to play at max effort, because if they do, St. Louis is a dangerous, dangerous team in the National League Central, like they proved with their 2 wins on Saturday and Sunday against the Jays.
Ty, you brought up the hustle part and everything, and
we're all hustling St. Louis, baby.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like it though, does it, bud?
No.
No. It almost. Let me ask you this real quick, and correct me if I'm wrong here, but Yachty retired last year. Wainwright's retiring this year. You're bringing in a new crop of young guys, and just kind of seems like they're bringing in a new style of play there in St. Louis. And frankly, I don't think it's going to be for the best.
I mean, that's an observation from a fan of another team in the National League Central, and I'm pretty sure that you can make parallels and comparison to that. And you got it. An upbeat. I'm upbeat about the loss. I'm not going to hit panic button because we lost 3 straight to who I deemed as a World Series championship contender, who Gary deemed as a team that could potentially set the record for Major League Baseball wins this season. I'm not going to hang my head about a 3-game series sweep.
Hold up. Because, so let's look at the track records here, okay? Last year, Gary was high and mighty on the Texas Rangers, okay? And we saw how that played out.
Yeah.
Then
fair.
And then just this weekend, you're over here and you're talking Atlanta Braves and winning 150 games.
Yeah. Who's going to beat them? Wait, St. Louis is probably the second best team in the National League. Stove. St. Louis took 3 cracks at him and could manage and muster up 3 runs.
Well, because they weren't hustling.
And they got
hustling.
They got
They weren't hustling.
Yeah. They were on their back foot. They were playing a little scared. They were afraid. They walked in and saw what a big boy baseball team is and said, oh, man, we ain't got a shot. I don't know. I like the young crop of kids they're bringing in. I like the young crop of kids they're bringing in because it seems like every single guy that we have that has been brought up through the farm system is a multifaceted, unbelievable Swiss Army knife. I mean, we have.
I will give you that. And to your point and to your credit, when we went through the National League Central and talking about runs per game and everything, until they hit Atlanta, they were hitting the 6-9 run mark against Toronto and everything. I was like, good grief, So to your credit, yes, I will agree with you that St. Louis does a very, very good job with their farm system, bringing guys up, and the fact that they retain guys too for so long is incredible too. So I will give you credit where credit's due.
There's power and there's speed and there's managing it all. And I think honestly, that's
let's not talk about speed though. Let's take speed out of the equation because they're not hustling. So take
right.
speed out of the equation.
Mm-hmm. But that to my point, and I think really to where Ollie's criticism is actually warranted here, is because they have that natural God-given ability. Go do it. Go put it on full display.
Absolutely, I agree with you.
And I understand. Tyler's coming from the standpoint of I'm going to save myself. This is a team that's going to be a postseason run, and I want to save myself for that. No, you're on the field for a reason. Go. Yeah. I hate it. I hate it when my players got done with a game and they sprinted out to left field to go sit in the circle in the huddle. That pissed me off because that meant you guys had gas left. You just sprinted out to left field. You left some gas in the tank.
I agree.
I want to leave it all on the floor, and I want to leave it all on the field, and so does Ollie. And so I'm in favor of him pushing and maybe poking the cattle prod a little bit here in the early going.
Agreed.
Can't let them get away with it now because they'll try to get away with it in September.
Right.
All right. Well, Stove, we missed you last week. Some technical difficulties. What series were you looking at in opening week?
Honestly, I was obviously looking at the Cubs Brewers series, and to start the season off right, Cubs got a dub, that all elusive dub that every team is looking for on opening day. They were sitting first in the NL Central.
For 1 day, you had it.
No, 2 days. 2 days. 2 days. 2 days. All right. 2 days.
All right, we don't have it.
And we talked when we were talking with the Brewers and the Cubs in our NL Central matchups. We were talking about Hader and the pitching matchup for Milwaukee. Yeah, he was decent, but that third time through the lineup, the Cubs got to him. And let's face it, the Cubs' offensive lineup, it's not all that great. And so to see the Cubs tack on 4 or 5 runs on him, I believe it was nice to see on opening day. Stroman did the job for the Cubs. Dansby, was a shell of himself in spring training. And what's he do? He comes first plate appearance, first hit and first RBI as a Cubs. I mean, you got to love it. I mean, that's storybook telling right there, Ty. That's storybook telling, storybook ending. Cubs get the first dub of the season, sitting in first place. Got to love it. Then it just went downhill from there. They ended up losing, the next 2. Wasn't great. Some questionable managerial decisions when it comes to pitching, and poor outfield play as well, by some veterans that you typically would not see that from. And so overall, I was going in, I was looking for a series sweep. Not gonna lie. I mean, I don't care if you want to tell me I'm dumb, I'm stupid, or whoa, slow the brakes there. We don't have Clydesdales that we bring out on opening day or anything else like that. We have the Billy Goat. Okay. But I was really looking forward for a series sweep. And after that first game, I was really feeling it. I was about ready to put all my money on Cubs for a World Series 162-0 regular season.
Absolutely.
Glad I didn't. But yeah, so 1-2 after opening weekend. Not the start that you were looking for, and then to follow it up, with a loss in Cincy there, it's just not good. They got the dub yesterday, but yeah, it wasn't good. Pitching is going to be a problem. I said that early on.
Yep.
I think we all said it about the Cubs, even though the couple guys that they did bring in, it's not until they get Hendricks back, which it doesn't sound like they're going to get Hendricks back until probably maybe first part of June. And rightfully so. You don't want to rush him or anything else like that. But yeah, it was a tough opening weekend, I will say. But I was glad glad we got to see the Cubs be in first place there for 2 days.
I like what you guys did in the offseason with your lineup and bringing in some key veterans as well.
Yeah.
But the pitching is still
a work
still
in
suspect.
progress. Yeah, absolutely.
It's not there.
No.
It's I mean, point blank, black and white, pitching's not there for Chicago right now. Period.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
All right. Well, you guys bring up two different things that ended up being highlights of my opening series. I wanted to highlight opening day, and it'll be the only time, I promise, that the Nats will be highlighted this year. They opened the season against the Braves. I was in the building, so I wanted to highlight this series. And Stove, you mentioned questionable managerial decisions. I don't know what Davey Martinez is doing most of the time. Corbin starts opening day, which there were 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, 5, 6 other viable options other than starting Corbin to start the season. And of course, he goes out, gets shelled by probably the best lineup in baseball. And then Davey's got Joey Meneses playing DH instead of right field or DH instead of first base. And I just don't know what he's doing as a manager. But the atmosphere was great. Opening day in the ballpark. Got a Ben's half smoke, if nobody knows what that is. It's a local kind of delicacy, I would call it, but it's like a half sausage, half hot dog conglomerate that they make up. And then you throw some chili cheese and some onions on it. And
can't go wrong.
It's delectable. I sent a picture to the group. It is a tremendous.
How much were the beers?
The beers, were
they like 12?
Yeah.
The most important question, right?
Yeah.
Don't bury the lead, Gary.
Yeah. We partook in a few ballpark waters, but the Nats are still charging prices as if they are the defending World Series champs with Juan Soto. Yeah, it's a disaster there. And I don't know what they're doing. The ownership group, there was rumor that they'd sell this offseason, and they didn't. But anyway, that Braves lineup is disgusting. Max Fried actually got hurt on opening day on the 15-day IL. Might miss more than 15 days. It looks like a hammy, and those can linger. So that's yet another blow to the Braves rotation. But, ho-hum, they can just fucking mash away and score 10 runs a game and make up for the pitching while they get healthy, because they're missing Fried. And right now, Soroka was optioned, and they've got a bunch of guys that they're trying to figure out where they're going to fit them into the rotation. So they're going to rely on that offense to mash, and that offense can mash. Seeing them in person, the speed they have too is astounding. The Nats are a fast team, and that's about all we are, is a fast team. CJ Abrams had the ultimate day with 3 errors and an 0 for 4 day. So that's a great start to the season for our number 1 prospect. But the Braves are just everywhere. They're fast everywhere, and they're aggressive. They're aggressive on the base paths. Acuna, he gets on base, you basically know he's going to try to swipe second base, and he did against us once. But yeah, it was a great day. It was a great day, though. Not a good series. We took one on Sunday against them. Josiah Gray got rocked on Saturday. Mackenzie Gore looked really good on Sunday. We need those 2 guys to be the prospects that they are advertised to be if this rebuild's going to work at all. And Mackenzie Gore pitched as advertised on Sunday. Josiah Gray, not so much on Saturday. Got rocked around to the tune of 5 runs over like 4 innings, and 3 of them were bombs. So not good. Not good.
I want to see more consistency out of Mackenzie because I think he has the potential to be that number 1 guy for the Nationals for staff. I think he's got every potential to be in the conversation for a National League Cy Young when he puts it all together. He needs consistency because his spring was shaky AF. I mean, it was rocky, it was wobbly. He settled down and he put things together on Sunday, like you mentioned. But from the Mackenzie Gore fantasy owner perspective that I am, I'm going to need to see a little more consistency out of him. And you brought up an interesting point, and I wanted to bring this up because we all know that going to games live is so much different than watching these stars on television or watching these stars on YouTube in a highlight reel. I know this from the Kansas City perspective. I get the opportunity to check in on some of the other great players and teams. That's the beauty of living 5 hours away on a hop, skip, and jump down the interstate and being able to catch a ball game at a relatively inexpensive price because Kansas City's horrible. So I get to see guys like Bryce Harper up close. I get to see guys like Mike Trout and Shohei when the Angels come to town. Those are great, easy, accessible tickets. And I can tell you this, especially when it comes to guys like Harp and Trout. They are the megastars of the game for a reason. And then when you see them in person, you really appreciate everything that they do on the baseball diamond, and it's magnified. What was it like seeing the monsters like Austin Riley, and you mentioned him, Ronald Acuna? What's it like seeing those guys in person?
Yeah, so I went to a Mets game a couple years ago, opening day against the Mets, and I remember remarking that Pete Alonso is a fucking donkey, dude. He's so goddamn big. He's all of 6'6", and he's all of 260, and he looks like he's all of 6'6" and 260. And Austin Riley is that same way, right? I know he's not quite 6'6", he's not quite 260, but you can tell that dude grew up on corn and steak. Like, huge, country, strong dude, and he is imposing on the field. And even Acuna, who's not the biggest of dudes, you could tell that he's just a freakish athlete, chiseled from stone. But yeah, Austin Riley he's an intimidating character when he steps into the box. Big dude for sure. Awesome.
Well, I mean, and I'm glad you got the opportunity to experience opening day. It's something that I truly treasure. I've been, multiple baseball games, Major League, at various stadiums, and there's nothing that will compare unless maybe postseason, which we haven't done yet because prices are a little bit outrageous for this radio budget. But if you can snag a chance to go see opening day, it is an absolute bucket list item on any baseball fan. And so I'm glad you got to be able to enjoy that in the pock, as they say.
Yeah, for sure. There's nothing that compares to the pomp and circumstance of opening day. And you mentioned Stove, I think, mentioned the Clydesdales. You had them on the field. They actually had the Clydesdales on the field in Washington as well.
Nice.
It's a tradition. I'm not really sure why, but they get the Clydesdales in.
That's because St. Louis does it so well. You just copy and paste it.
They had to co-opt it.
That's awesome.
All right, well, let's shift gears ahead to this week. Ty, what series you looking at this week, man?
All right. Looking at and I'm going to double check because I lost my overlay here. I'm looking at the Pirates and the White Sox playing a weekend series. That's right, guys, right? Pirates, White Sox, that's what I settled on.
Good.
All right. Pirates, White Sox. And really for a couple of reasons. One is because we all know that I am a secret, apparently, harbor of love for the Chicago White Sox. I have picked their pitchers in 2 consecutive seasons to win American League Cy Youngs. Last year with Lucas Giolito, this year with Cease, providing, of course, that DeGrom gets injured at some point. If he gets injured at some point. If not, it might be or may not be after DeGrom's opening day jitters, DeGrom's to lose. But
yeah, what happened there?
Rough. Another softball game, kind of like Toronto and St. Louis. Anyways, I love the Chicago White Sox pitching staff, but it has been shaky and inconsistent here to start off the year. And then there's no bones about it. These guys that were hailed to come in and be the flamethrowers and lights out pitchers that they thought them to be have been shaky, have been rough. Bullpen is not much better in Chicago right now, and they are getting out of games, unraveling late because of it. Offense is still there. Unfortunately for the White Sox, recent injury just picked up and announced today to Eloy Jimenez. That drastically changes the pop and the power in that lineup. They've called up the Oscar Colas for that replacement. But the White Sox lineup is fun and it's got power and it's got some speed and it's got things that draw you interested in. But the big reason that I highlighted this series is because through the first 72 hours of baseball, maybe a little more, I have been absolutely fascinated with the freak of nature that is the Pittsburgh Pirates leadoff hitter in O'Neal Cruz. And he impressed me a hell of a lot last year by not only throwing the hardest ball across the diamond, but also hitting the ball the hardest with the StatCast era. so I already knew he was an impressive freak of nature and an impressive athlete. And then you watch him a couple times this year, and his attributes, his just overall ability has doubled from where he was at the beginning of last season when we all scratched our heads and said, how can you keep this guy down? How can you keep this guy in the minor leagues? To when he got called up, he is 2 times better than he was a year ago at this time. And his trajectory is only going to increase. And I mean, the stats are outstanding. He is a gigantic human being at the shortstop spot, playing a position that you would normally see him out in center field or left or somewhere. He's got speed. He's got the power. He is a phenomenal athlete. I am all aboard the O'Neal Cruz train, and I'm really just excited about this Pirates lineup. Again, we talked about it. There is a really weird mixture of veteran guys and rookie guys here on this lineup that make them enticing and make them exciting to watch. I mentioned it at the beginning, and I didn't get a lot of love for it, but I said, guys, don't forget about Brian Reynolds. Don't sleep on Brian Reynolds. What does Brian Reynolds do? He's probably the hottest hitter in the National League right now with a couple, 3 home runs in 3 games, and he's got a couple extra base hits in there as well. He continues to swing the bat really well at the top of the lineup. Key Bryant has started dangerously slow, ice cold, but a player that is and traditionally has been streaky. And when he's hot, he's red hot. And if he gets hot this weekend against a spotty, let's say, White Sox pitching staff in White Sox pitching rotation, this Pirates lineup could go off. And this could be a fun series from an offensive standpoint. And one of the reasons I watch, and I know a lot of times we focus on series previews and we say, all right, what's my 3 pitching matchups? Who's my boys? Who's going to take the bump? I'm looking at this because I want to watch what this team or what these 2 teams can do from an offensive standpoint in the era that we're in, without the shifts, without with the pitch clock, with the extra bases, because these guys love to take the extra bag and they're constantly aggressive. This matchup to me, as I was looking at the weekend slate and the weekend series, in terms of the rule changes that we have discussed ad nauseum here on the pod, I think these 2 teams play exactly into the brand of baseball that Major League Baseball wants fans to get excited about and wants fans to watch. And that's constant energy, constant action, ball constantly being in play, and runners constantly on the go. These 2 teams do it to a T. The Chicago with their brand new manager, whose name eludes me for the moment, Grafal. He
got his first managerial win on opening day.
On opening day against the World Series champs, nonetheless, in Houston. So hats off to you, sir. But he seems like an extremely lovable, likable guy in the clubhouse, like a guy that the entire clubhouse has bought in. Definitely a player's manager, right? I mean, so the guys are all on board with his new style that he's bringing in. And Pittsburgh, of course, has always kind of had that little extra aggressiveness in terms of offense because they've had to make up for lack of pitching year after year after year, which is still where they're at this year. So their offense has always been fun to watch. And I think Chicago will match that intensity. And I think that we're going to have 9 to 7 ball games really throughout this entire series. I mean, if I'm playing it in Vegas right now, Chicago and Pittsburgh over all 3 days of the weekend series, because I know at least I'm going to hit 2 of them or should. That said, because it's the RosinBaggers podcast, it's probably going to be 2-to-1 pitching duels the entire duration. We might even see a no-hitter get thrown. I have no idea. I'm excited to see what these 2 offenses can do because it is a very sexy collision in terms of 2 teams that match each other really in an offensive style. Pittsburgh, not so much on the power, except for a couple guys. But it will be fun, and it will be a very fun matchup to watch on the offensive side.
Yeah, that no-no is not coming from Michael Kopech, who served up 5 tee shots against a terrible Giants lineup.
Yeah.
That pitching has really struggled out the gate. Despite the fact
negative 31 fantasy points, by the way, if you're keeping track at home.
Yeah.
Because I started Kopech in a very favorable matchup against San Francisco, and I got negative 31.
Same here.
Oof.
Unbelievable. All right, Stove. Let's let's throw it over to you. What series are you looking forward to this week?
Well, your dad, Mr. Gary Freese Sr., will be happy to hear that I am looking forward to the Braves and Padres series this weekend.
A lot of star power in that matchup.
A lot of star power. Yeah. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but Tatis Jr. is still not
yet.
He's still not out there.
He's got what?
20, 30
games left.
Yeah, something like that. Just imagine if he was in the series.
Yeah, right.
Third series of the season, and Padres, Tatis, Machado,
Soto.
Yeah. And against the Braves.
Yeah.
Against the Braves. That would be, I mean, that might be one of the matchups of the season.
Yeah.
Honestly.
For sure.
But no, this one I'm looking forward to. Honestly, just seeing how the Braves, if they can continue their run per game average, if they can keep that offensive powerhouse up every single game against the Padres. You'll probably face Darvish, he's on the decline. He's been on the decline for about a couple of years now. Even when he was with the Cubs, he was kind of on that start of that decline there. But a lot of star power for both teams. And it's been impressive what the Braves have done since they've lost Freeman. I mean, you lose Freddie Freeman, then you go and you lose Dansby Swanson last year, and they're still raking.
Yeah.
And by all means, like, Dansby to me is not one of those powerhouse guys. I think he was good. I don't think he was great, by all means. But he was still good. He was above average. He was good. He got you some wins, got some timely hits and everything. And it's just amazing what the Braves have done. And we talked about it last year on the podcast, how the Braves have secured a lot of their players, a lot of their star players 5, 6, 7 years from last year. Lock them up. But no, it's going to be interesting to see how the Braves, if they can continue the offensive powerhouse that they have been doing so far this season. I agree they're a great team so far. To me, this almost reminds me, and I don't want to anger you, Gary Freese Sr., but it kind of reminds me of the New York Yankees last year. Okay, last year we talked about the Yankees and their powerful lineup and how they were doing 8, 9 runs a game and everything, and it worked for them for the first part of the season. Then after the All-Star break, everything broke to hell, and they made the playoffs, but they weren't the same team.
Yeah, they ran into the fact that people weren't afraid of them anymore.
Yeah,
they realized that they could pitch to him because the lineup wasn't great, and they just stopped giving them free passes. And I wonder if Atlanta will be able to keep mashing the way they're mashing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're waiting for a team to make them human. You're waiting for somebody to essentially show the rest of the Major League Baseball world where the armor is.
Drago. He's cut.
Yeah.
It's that moment right there.
He can bleed.
Yeah. But right now they've shown very little resistance to any punch that any baseball team has thrown yet. They're built a little bit differently than the Yankees to me, from a year ago. And I think, Gary, you mentioned it. The Yankees lineup from a 1 through 9 standpoint wasn't really that intimidating, but because they were mashing up at the top 1 through 4, it really altered the way the pitchers early on were approaching that lineup, and they were very delicate with it in the early stages, and the Yankees took full advantage of that apprehensiveness to be aggressive. And then once pitchers started going after the bottom half of that lineup, things kind of swiveled. The problem with Atlanta is the bottom of the lineup, you could put that in the top 4 in any other Major League Baseball team, and you'd have a really damn good baseball team in the top 4. They don't, and that's why I even said and was bullish, quite frankly, this weekend. I'm like, listen, I don't know who's going to beat the Braves, and right now I'd be curious, and I think maybe your series might start to tell a few tales in terms of how human are these Braves, or how robotic are these Braves, and what is the key to beating them? And I think there's 29 baseball teams still trying to figure out that answer.
Yeah, for sure. My dad mentioned the Rays. We're going to talk about them in just a moment, but and think about this, right? As far as the Yankees last year versus maybe what the Braves are this year, right? If that lineup continues to be what it is, where do you attack it? How? I say this to Yankees fans every time they bring up Aaron Judge's 62 last year. How disrespectful was it that in September, pitchers were still pitching to him, throwing him fastballs in the zone? Imagine a pitcher in the early 2000s, the late 90s, doing that with McGuire and Sosa and Bonds. Like, they didn't pitch to the Bonds would go entire series and not get a pitch to hit.
Absolutely.
And Aaron Judge was getting pitches in every single. That's how little pitchers were intimidated by that Yankees lineup last year.
Yeah.
And we talked about it at the All-Star break. Stove, you were very bullish on the fact that they were going to come down, and you were absolutely right. That how many games last year did they win on an Aaron Judge walk-off home run, or an Aaron Judge walk-off hit, or somebody else got a late walk-off hit, and they were living by the seat of their pants, winning games 1-0, 2-1. And the pitching fell apart in the second half of the season, and they couldn't match, right?
Yeah.
And they won a lot of those games by the quote-unquote magic, right? And it's not sustainable. And you mentioned it, Ty, and maybe this weekend we see if the Padres can be that team that shows that the Braves are human, that they do bleed, right? Be interested to see. I know my dad doesn't want to see it, but it'll be interesting to see, because the Padres, we do expect them to be one of the better teams in the NL.
Yeah.
If they can't do it, then it goes back to what Ty said. Who fucking beats them?
Who does it? Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, well, I'll finish up here. The series I'm looking forward to this weekend, the Dodgers against the upstart Diamondbacks. And I know in our season preview in the NL West, Ty, you and I were both pretty bullish on the Diamondbacks this year. Love the young core. Potentially even looking at them as a fringe playoff team, or at least in contention down the stretch. They're off to a really good start to the season, sitting in second place behind the Dodgers, who are off to a good start, which is what we expected. But it does look like these young guys in Arizona can play ball. They do need a little bit more pitching, I think. They can't just rely on their top two, because it is a little bit shaky, a little bit suspect after those top two. But they've got a really good 1-2 punch in that rotation. And they're starting to hit the ball well in that lineup. They got hot in the second half of last year, and it looks like they're keeping it going a little bit to start this season. I'm really curious. This, I think, is going to be a litmus test for this young team against the Dodgers team that maybe, right, they may look a little gettable right now. I know we talked about them making moves maybe around the All-Star break, but right now the rotation's a little bit thin because of injury. The lineup's even a little bit thin, especially with the Gavin Lux injury. Maybe this is an opportunity for these upstart Diamondbacks to say, hey, we're here and we're here to stay. And in an early season, a matchup with the Dodgers could prove potentially. And they've got their 1-2 punch going in this series. I believe it's in game 2 and 3, not in game 1 and 2, but they've got things kind of lined up for them to really measure themselves against the Dodgers here and see how they match up. They're hitting the ball well, and if they can continue to do that, I think they're going to stay alive in the NL West. I don't know if it's going to be enough for them to really push for a playoff spot this year, because I do expect the Padres to kind of be better than the start they've had. They're scuffling a little bit out the gates. I do expect them to be better than what they are right now. But look, this is an opportunity for a Diamondbacks team to kind of punt tick, just hey, we're here to stay and we're not going to go away.
Yeah, you have an opportunity for an early announcement, to make to the rest of the baseball world that, hey, we just took down the Los Angeles Dodgers, who have been the quote-unquote franchise in the National League. Let's face it, for the last 5 to 6 years. It's also really an opportunity, I think, to continue to pick up right now very key pivotal wins for an Arizona team, because I'll say this, I think there's wiggle room in Arizona. And I think if Arizona is anywhere close to remote contention by the break or by the deadline, I think Arizona buys. I think Arizona buys and hits the gas and tries to make a run at this thing. Arizona is a little bit differently ran franchise than a couple of the other markets that we've talked about here on the show when it comes to, are you a buyer or a seller at the deadline? I think Arizona, if applicable, if they've got some pieces in place like they do, and they're somewhere around contention, they're not going to shy away from going out and getting a name and making a run. Wins early are very pivotal for this Arizona team in terms of how it shakes out to be a fringe postseason team or not.
Yeah, you mentioned them being run a little different. They've been buyers in the past, right? We've seen them be buyers at the break in the past. But go ahead, Steve.
No, I was just going to say, Ty, you kind of mentioned it. They want to they want to make a name for themselves. They want to announce their presence with authority.
Love it.
Okay, meat.
So we're talking. I'm backtracking a little bit here, okay? But we've talked about the Diamondbacks, young team, okay? They're playing well right now. Okay. Last year, Orioles, young team.
Yeah.
Played well. Almost made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Gary's team last year that he picked, the Texas Rangers. No, it's not a knock. It's not a knock. But they were terrible last year.
Yeah.
But look at them this year.
Yeah.
Now, granted, they went out past 2 years, this offseason and last offseason. Yeah. They spent a total of almost $830 million.
Crazy.
In signings.
All that oil money.
Yeah, all that oil money. But look at them now. I think like your pick from last year, it was headed in the right direction. It was just maybe a year, maybe a year or two too soon. And we look at the Orioles. Okay, no one thought that that's where they would be last year at the end of the season.
Right.
Maybe it's, we're seeing this with some of these teams where they're a year or two out of their rebuilds. Now, Kansas City, Ty, Chicago for me, they've been in Washington for you. Yeah, they've been in their rebuilds for, 5-6 years, and they haven't gotten out of it yet.
Right.
But these other teams, it seems like they're on that trajectory upwards, and maybe it's just we're projecting them a year or so early than what they're actually projected. But last year, the Texas Rangers, for you, this year they're off to a good start this year. Playing real good ball, hitting, pitching so far has been decent. And now the Diamondbacks, so yeah, would it be fair to say Diamondbacks could be the Baltimore Orioles of last year?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
the thing for me with Arizona, and I'll just piggyback a little bit on what Stove said when you're talking about rebuilds and going back to a little bit about my point about what they have in place. We look at teams like Pittsburgh and Baltimore and Kansas City Those three just off the top of the head. You can throw Washington in there with Mackenzie Gore and C.J. Abrams, and you see that there's good young pieces and good young talent that is going to be coming up through the ranks in the very near future. And you start to put teams on that trajectory. Okay, well, maybe they're in a rebuild mode, but certainly on a 3 to 4 year plan to potentially make the postseason. For Arizona, for me, they got the young guys into the lineup, and we saw that these young guys were going to be coming into the fold last year. What I was so impressed with Arizona, and why I think that they may have set themselves on a slightly quicker course than the other teams that we talk about when we talk about rebuilds, is quietly in the offseason, they completely went under the radar and made every single right move that they could possibly make to get the guys in that they brought in. The Lourdes Gurriel move, the Evan Longoria move, those and Kyle Lewis, huge under the radar moves that nobody picked up on because everybody else was focusing on who the teams were that were apparently on that trajectory, on that rebuild path, and everyone was focusing on them, and everyone was focusing on the big dogs and the big players and seeing where they were going to go. I love the fact that Arizona, literally quite like a sneak ninja attack, came up through the offseason, and all of a sudden this weekend has an opportunity to say, oh, by the way, we're here, and we just took down the Dodgers in a 3-game series. I love what they've done, and they've set themselves on a path to be successful this year if they continue to push the right buttons. And right now, their front office hasn't shown me any reason to believe they won't do it. They've shown that aggressiveness, and they've shown that they not only are aggressive in who they get, but they're also selective in who they get, and they get the right guys into the clubhouse. I think they do it again. They're impressive, and quite frankly, I wouldn't be shocked. I wouldn't be surprised. If they take 2 or 3 from the Dodgers, I would not be coming into the office Monday morning with my head sewn into the carpet saying, I don't know what happened. What is baseball? It wouldn't shock me in the slightest to see Arizona come out and take 2 or 3 this weekend.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up those offseason moves because, at the time, they felt like moves of teams that needed to plug a hole.
Mm-hmm.
And we usually think of that in terms of teams that are contenders, right? Mm-hmm. And I think those moves say a lot about where Arizona's front office thinks they're at too. In looking at those as roster finishing moves as opposed to roster building moves, right? We saw
exactly.
I'll go back to the Cubs, right? The Cubs were building with, we want to bring in some starts of power, but we also want to fill a roster. We need to build out a roster with some of these moves. Whereas Arizona didn't go out and make super flashy signings. They made signings to finish their roster. Evan Longoria, a huge locker room guy, huge leadership guy. Kyle Lewis, solid starter. Gurriel, guy who can handle the bat against both righties and lefties and can help you finish out a lineup as well. So I think that says a lot about where Arizona thinks they're at, in addition to where we all are saying we think Arizona might be if these young pieces come together. All right, let's pivot over to a little fair or foul here. We only really have one on the. All right, so through now 6 games of their regular season, the Tampa Bay Rays are undefeated. And I'm going to pose this question very delicately, this fair or foul discussion very delicately, because they have played the Tigers and they have played the Nationals. And they now play the Oakland Athletics. So let's keep that in perspective. But, Ty, fair or foul, the undefeated Rays are title contenders.
Follow it up with the 4-game series with the Sox. You take a break with the Jays, and then you have a 3-game series with the Cincinnati Reds. Schedule has been extremely favorable to the Tampa Bay Rays, to say the least. And you were dead on it, discussing the schedule. Yes, we can take a look at 6-0, and yes, we can be excited about 6-0. Who'd you play? You played Detroit. Detroit picked up a win against Houston today. That's cool. Washington we already heard that was the last time we'll be talking about the Nationals on the pod in terms of a series preview, so we know what they bring to the table, and we certainly know very well what Oakland is potentially going to bring to the table this weekend. And oh, by the way, I believe it's in the Trop for Tampa, so you add the piped in environment as well. Nonetheless, here's the deal, and here's why I say yes, contenders potentially for a title, because if you're in the playoffs, if you're in the postseason, I think there's a legitimate chance that you can contend for a title. And I think the Philadelphia Phillies proved that a year ago, and there has been countless other examples of baseball teams that have done the same damn thing. I love the way Tampa goes about their business, because they go about their business in the most easy way to be a fan of. They are consistently good. And I can't explain it any other way than that. We go through, as sports fans of a franchise, ebbs and flows, ups and downs, roller coasters of consistency. We go through rebuilds. We go through years and stretches where it's pretty abysmal to be a fan of a certain baseball team. I don't know, other than maybe the first few years coming out of expansion, if Tampa fans have ever had to endure the pain of a rebuild, or just endure the pain of a season that was subpar and lacked in terms of expectations. They've never had that. They've consistently been good. And I will liken it to, we'll flip sports here really quick. I know that there might not be a lot of ice hockey fans on the show, but other than this season, which was for the first season in my 37 years of knowledge of being a Blues fan, this was the first season that we had a full-on meltdown, throw all your talent away rebuild that St. Louis is going through. The Tampa Rays are the hockey version of what was 1986 to 2022 St. Louis Blues, a team that is consistently going to make a postseason run, a team that is going to consistently play well in the postseason and put yourself in an opportunity to win a World Series or a la Lord Stanley Cup. And you know, lo and behold, in 2019, it finally happened for the St. Louis Blues. They had been knocking on the door long enough, and it finally opened. They're going to get opportunities. They will be a contender because they will be in the postseason again. And there's no reason that this lineup has given me no inclination that it's going to drop off anytime soon. The young guys are playing well. Guys that we had question marks maybe coming into the season because we just hadn't seen them in enough playing time have already answered calls. Jose Siri appears to just be a perfect addition to that lineup. You know, you already have the young talent with Wander Franco. Francisco Mejia is playing well. He was a highly touted prospect several years ago, back in 2017 as a catcher. Really took him a long time to get into the major league flow. They've added, of course, Isaac Paredes at the 2B spot, and there's just several good things about this lineup. And oh, by the way, Randy Arozarena has not cooled off from his World Baseball Classic heroics. He continues to play as good as anybody else in Major League Baseball right now. The Tampa Rays are for real. They are for real in terms of potentially hitting 90 this year on a win total, and they are for real in terms of potentially being a contender because, again, as said, if you're in the ballpark, you got a shot. And if you're playing October baseball, you got a shot. And I think they match up extremely well in terms of a series against teams. I think 1-for-1, if you're playing a one and done against Houston, I'm probably going to say Houston 75 out of 100 times against Tampa. If you play them in a 5-game series, I'm going to stretch that out and say Tampa's got a hell of a lot better shot to hang tough and hang close and get you to a game 5. And then it's 9 innings of baseball. And we know in baseball, when you play 9 innings of baseball, anything can happen. Listen, for me, Tampa is a serious contender. They are going to be an extremely tough out for anybody at any point, whether it's a regular season series or a postseason series. I'm high on Tampa right now, and I'm buying the fact that they're contenders. I'm not buying the fact that they're going to win a World Series. I'm buying the fact that they are going to be a contender for one.
Nice.
So, Ty, you mentioned these early games and these early series and, you know, who they play, blah, 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 this and that. you know what? You got to win those games too, bud. And here you are. You're talking about the Atlanta Braves going 150-12 on the season, and they've already lost a game. And here we're talking about the Tampa Bay Rays, and they're undefeated. So why are they going 162-0? It's just your reasoning behind some of these things is just downright like asinine. Juvenile.
I'm a massive ball of contradiction, baby.
Exactly.
Absorb it.
But to go with your question here, absolutely, this is a by far fair question. Tampa Bay, honestly, almost every single year is a playoff contender.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at their history from when Joe Madden was managing them, they've been a playoff contender almost every single year. So yeah, I don't care if, I don't care who they've played so far. You still got to play the damn game.
Sure.
So 6-0 against, three, or two of your weaker teams in the major league, and then you go to the Rays and then you play whoever else. You still got to play the game. You still got to win. So yes, absolutely fair. Count me in all the way. Tampa Bay playoff contenders.
Yeah, it's 3 for 3. I think the big thing for me is, look, we know about the arms, right? We know they're just going to roll out 25 dudes that can throw 100 miles an hour, and 5 of them get injured. They've got 20 in reserve. But the big thing for me is what this lineup has become. Mm-hmm. And we saw Wander last year struggle mightily, but he had the wrist problem. It was health for him last year. And of course, we're only 6 games into the season, but he looks like 2021 Wander Franco. Mm-hmm. And he's raking, stealing bases, aggressive on the base paths, Gold Glover in the field. And then you mentioned Jose Siri. Like, yeah, okay, we're just going to roll another dude out of the fucking farm system who can hit 20 home runs and steal 20 bases. Go fucking figure. Rosarena's still hot from the World Baseball Classic. Yandy is off to a hot start. I think he's batting .330 to start the season.
Good point.
He's got a couple of bombs already out the gate. This lineup is long, and I didn't even mention some of the guys that you mentioned there, Ty, when you were talking too. Like this lineup is longer than expected, and I just think, like you mentioned, with going all the way back to Joe Madden, is this not like the quietest?
It is because
dynasty ever. Like
where they're
they
at,
always win.
They're in Tampa.
Yeah,
retirement capital.
Nobody
of the
attends
world.
games.
No one attends
none
games.
of them televised.
Exactly.
It's crazy, but yeah, I mean, 90 games is not out of the equation. Winning the AL East, to be completely honest, is not out of the equation. Sure. The way they've gotten out of the gates, and Toronto is in last place right now,
right?
Yeah.
In that division, and I don't at all expect it to finish that way, but
right.
The reality is that's what it is right now. One team's undefeated, and one team's in the basement of that division, and you mentioned the 5 and 7 game series. If it's a one and done, sure, right? Maybe there's a team that's got more talent. Houston, right? Undisputable that they've got a lot of talent. But in a 5 to 7 game series, they're just so long. They're deep. The rotation, the bullpen. We mentioned all the arms. The lineup is long. They're hitting the ball well. They've got a lot of speed. Rosarena is not just a guy who can mash. He's a guy who really disrupts on the base paths as well. And they've got a lot of guys in that lineup that look just like that on paper. I agree. Fair for me. Tampa Bay is certainly, in my opinion, a title contender for sure. All right, well let's finish up here. Stove, kind of closing thoughts you got for us, man? Oh, actually, let's address that.
Mailbag.
So Gary Freese Sr. says, I see the Padres are at 500, but do you guys think they match up to give the Braves a headache? Gary?
I think so. I just think that with all that star power in San Diego, you've got to think that, potentially they could be a tougher matchup for the Braves. But I mean, the reality is I look at what the Braves are doing right now and what they bring to the table and who they can roll out and what they did to the Cardinals. Sorry, Ty. You look at Ty mentioned it, right? Are the Cardinals the second best team in the NL? Possibly,
No.
Right? There's probably 3-4 teams I throw in that palm of my hand and shake them up and say these are the next best teams in the NL, and the Cardinals are among them, and the Braves, for lack of a better term, put it on them. So are the Padres a bit of a headache in terms of matchup? Yeah, because I think they've got enough bats to kind of match with them, but I still think the Braves are the class of the NL right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Headaches? No. Maybe like a little growing pain or something like that. Maybe, maybe a little splinter. Yeah, a little splinter or something here or there. But headache? Nah, not yet. Not yet.
Yeah.
Maybe once they get Tatis
Daddy
back, maybe. But man, Braves lineup is it's unbelievably good.
Yeah.
Here's the other thing, guys. You look at the Atlanta Braves, and again, I'm bullish on the Cardinals, and rightfully so. There's high expectations here in St. Louis this season in terms of what they have the potential to do. And you look at what the Braves did to them, and you got, we talk about the Braves bats. I want to talk about the Braves pitching, because the Braves pitching, by the way, not the top 3 guys in the Atlanta rotation who got St. Louis this week. Not the top 3 guys in the rotation held the Cardinals to 4 runs in 3 games. That's not your top 3 starters. By the way, guess who San Diego gets? They get the big 3. They get the big 3 for probably pitching. Strider, to be determined, I guess, with the injury to Max Fried, and Charlie Morton's going to start that 3rd game. They're getting the top half of the rotation in Atlanta. That scares the hell out of me. Less about what these Atlanta bats can do to the San Diego pitching, more on can the Padres score against this Atlanta Braves pitching. That's the big question mark I have. Listen, do they have the tools to give the Braves a headache? Hell yes, they do. Can those tools get on base, period, to get runs, to be in a ball game? I don't know. The answer is still very much up in flux right now, just based on my observations. And again, it's a lot less about what Atlanta can do offensively and a lot more on what they can do defensively and what they can do on the bump. You held a playoff team from a year ago and a team that has high expectations to return and do more damage this season to 4 runs in 3 games without your top 3 pitchers for the week. Again, who beats these guys? We might find out.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's bring it home. So what do you got for us? Close the thoughts, bud.
Great opening week. As always, great opening day. And I will say this, I know we've touched base on it on several podcasts so far. Ty, you've mentioned it to start the podcast tonight. Pitch clock, all that stuff. I was very skeptical of it. I'm very old school when it comes to baseball. We are seeing a change in the length of games. Geez, Gary, it's my kid's chair. But I'll go out on a limb here, and I will say it's getting to me. I'm not there yet, just because I'm old-fashioned like that, but it's moving me in the right direction so far. I'll leave it there.
Ty, what you got for me?
It's working. Whatever it is that it is, for whatever reasons unknown, for all of the same reasons Big Stove said, I had absolute dread and reservation heading into the 2023 Major League Baseball season with the rule changes. We have played 6 games, and in those 6 games, it's absolutely working. I am fully locked in. I am engaged. 2.5 hours feels like the blink of an eye, and that's the way it should. With the way that this pace has been projected, I understand there are concerns, and I understand that there are arguments. You look at what happened in New York with Pete Alonso going back to first, walking back to first, getting called for a pitch clock violation because Pete could get his ass back to first base quickly enough. You looked at what happened yesterday to Manny Machado getting tossed in the first game for arguing about the pitch clock violation. It's a part of the game. Those instances happen, and those instances are going to happen, but those instances make me less aggravated than when I watch a home plate umpire get 85% of his damn calls right. You want to talk about game-changing plays, and everybody says, that's a game-changing play. That was a ball, and they called that a ball because he didn't get in the box and he wasn't ready to hit. They called it a strike. That's a game-changing play. You know what else is game-changing plays? 27 missed calls in a game. Balls and strikes. The simplest damn thing you can do. We've got to do better, or we've got to utilize the technology we have. We have two options at this point, and we are accelerating at a pace. And unfortunately, it is the home plate umpires doing it to themselves with their poor report cards that we have seen in so far this season. And one more point I will make before I will close. I will be wearing long sleeves for the rest of the duration of this podcast because I am scared to go sleeveless and have to go toe-to-toe with that guy because Stove, those are some guns, man. And you're scaring the shit out of little old me over here. I'm going to be long sleeves and bundled up so nobody has to see my sideshow because it ain't near as pretty as that.
Appreciate it, bud. Appreciate it.
Flex.
Well, I'm going to piggyback off a little bit of both what you guys said. The pitch clock. I will say in the ballpark on opening day that the game flowed really, really well. I know Max Fried naturally works pretty quickly, but Corbin doesn't normally. And he was on the bump, toeing the bump, pitching within the bounds of the clock. And the game went so smoothly. We didn't have any violations or anything like that in the game. And the injury to Fried was kind of the only real slow the game down because obviously you've got to get a pitcher up and you give them their unlimited time to get ready because they hadn't been expected to come in, yada yada. But I will say the game moved very quickly, and I say that because it's so easy in the ballpark or even at home when you're watching on TV to just get distracted by other things under the old rules, the non-pitch clock rules, because there was so much time between pitches. There were lulls, there was a lot of downtime, and you couldn't really turn your head. And it felt really good to be able to focus on the game and know the game was progressing and moving along. Ty, you mentioned the strike zone thing. And I know the robo-ump for the strike zone is an interesting proposition, a potential solution for the poor performance of home plate umpires, because there's no other way to put it. It's bad, and it might, I know every generation probably says this, but it's probably as bad as it's ever been, if not the worst it's ever been, just from quality of the game, the way it's called behind the plate. But I saw a video just yesterday of a robot umpire calling a strike on a pitch the catcher had to dive back across home plate for. It was so confusing because there's no realm of this earth. As a former pitcher, there's no realm of this earth that I would even want that pitch called a strike if I missed my spot by 4 feet. However, the ball crossed the plate below the numbers or below the letters, above the knees, and across the plate. And the robo-ump buzzed down to the home plate umpire, and he gave the weakest, sorry, buddy, you're out, 3 call. So I will say there is some trepidation there. I think we have to find a hybrid approach to incorporate the technology. I think you're 100% correct that the home plate umpires in our current state are accelerating our acceptance of a potential differing solution. I just don't know if it's 100% robo umps or if it's in some other form of fashion, because that was so awkward to see that video from the robo umps. All right, let's bring it home for Ty, for the big stove. Good to have you here in person, bud.
Yeah, it's been nice.
It's been awesome.
Ty, where are you at?
This weather's beautiful. We got to get the whole gang together one of these times for an episode.
It's 39 degrees in the Midwest. It's 39.
Come to Myrtle Beach.
We are barely above. We're not even above 40 here.
Ouch.
I'm miserable.
Ouch.
Yeah, come to Myrtle Beach.
I'll be there in a second.
But this has been our first regular season episode of season 2 of the RosinBaggers podcast. Good to have you with me. Good to have regular season baseball back. We are